Hi there, folks. Chris McLean, Peak Performance and Transformation Coach here, and we're back again with another episode of the Peak Performance and Predictable Growth Show, the peak performance show for agency founders, leaders, and owners, where we explore the agency journey from the unique perspective of those at the coalface of the industry. My guests help unlock and dissect strategies, tools, and tactics from the trenches that are working right now to help you deliver better results for your clients, as well as scale and grow your business to 6, 7 figures and beyond. And it's my pleasure today to welcome another agency coach, Janusz from Digital Agency Coach. He's a coach and mentor to agency leaders across the globe, and he helps agencies to run better businesses, lead better teams, make more money, and have fun doing so. He's an ex-agency owner himself, trusted speaker for Forbes, head coach at the GYDA Initiative, and a lead coach for Google across multiple agency growth programs throughout Europe and the Middle East. Janusz, impressive. Happy to have you here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. That's my intro. You've left me nowhere to go.
We're done. And thanks for joining us today. That was
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute
pleasure
to be here speaking with your audience. I'm an ex-agency owner. Now working with other agency owner founders, typically with growth. And growth is a very individual, independent thing. It can mean more money, more time, headcount, exit, sometimes closing the business down. Agency owners are stuck in a position that they don't want to be in. So help to unlock that. And typically it's everything bar the trade, so I don't help agencies do better PPC or better SEO or anything like that. So it's strategy, positioning is a big thing across all kind of aspects of the business, really. Sales and marketing and kind of leadership and management. So a bit of a generalist coming from a practical background, I would say.
No, it's an interesting position you're sort of working on there. It's the higher level mechanics almost of the business rather than the client acquisition or the systems and that kind of stuff where a lot of people sort of tend to work in there. Did that come from has your coaching expertise come out of your agency expertise? Maybe take us back to the agency days and sort of what that looked like for you and how that experience has helped you transition into helping others do the same thing.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm in an incredibly fortunate position. I love my role. I absolutely love with a passion working with agency owners. I've recently been through a bereavement actually, and I've realized how much of a positive work has been. Because I do just love working with agency leaders, people who are committed, people who are engaged, people who, want to make a change to their business. And that came from, or I think I first saw that when I was running my agency, working with my leadership team. And if I could spend every single day working with those people, I was a happy man, people that had that commercial awareness and sense of accountability and did what they said they were going to do. And I didn't get that same sense of fulfillment or purpose doing the day-to-day. So when I realized that, I started helping other agencies. I became a non-exec director. And all of a sudden realized that I kind of found my calling in life, I think. I enjoyed it. I thought I was pretty good at it. There seemed to be a need out there. And I moved into that. So I kind of exited my agency and started working exclusively with other agency owners. And then pretty quickly got noticed. I think got some good results with a couple of agencies I was working with. And I started helping Google across Europe and into South Africa too, heading up a series of agency growth programs, again, where we're helping agency owner founders grow, typically increase revenue, increase headcount, increase profitability. But yeah, it was very much rooted in working with entrepreneurs, visionaries, people who had found themselves running businesses that they probably didn't set out to do. Agency owners, they're good at doing the thing. We're good at PPC or SEO or web dev, creative video, whatever the thing is. And all of a sudden we find ourselves managing teams and leading and performance reviews and strategy and planning and taxes and payroll and HR and all this kind of stuff. And getting to the next stage of growth just seems, I don't know, agencies can flatline or plateau and feel like they're firefighting a bit. And that's typically where I step in, is to help with a vision and help put a plan together really for getting there.
Yeah. It's always a really interesting stage in a business, and it comes up a lot. I've noticed it a lot in talking to agency owners, just here on the show.
Yeah.
That transition from it's me and I'm the creative and I do everything and I love I'm on the tools every day, I'm coding, I'm designing, I'm doing the graphics, I'm building the web, I'm doing all of the stuff. And now I've got to switch into entrepreneur. I've got to be a business person now. I've got to do the accounts. I've got to do the finance. I've got to manage people. I've got to do all this other stuff. Maybe take us through that. What's the biggest challenge that you sort of find agency owners find in that space? Is it the relationship side? Is it I always say at some point, your agency life switches to it becomes a relationship management task. Essentially, you're managing people. You move from managing yourself to managing people, and it's empathy, right? It's emotional intelligence. It's a whole new skill set. Is that where people get stuck, or is it somewhere else that you find?
Yeah, I think there's probably two or three themes, I reckon, and it depends on whether they're doing it on their own or whether they have a business partner. And it depends really at the stage of growth that they're at. There's this very kind of MBA like a small business growth model called the Greiner curve, and it predicts small business growth. And it's been around since the 50s, this thing, and it's still relevant today, particularly for service-based businesses, for agencies where we're selling time, we're brokers of time, right? And this growth curve predicts inflection points, predicts points where businesses will get stuck. Because what's gotten you to that point, the cliche, won't get you to the next point. So you imagine, agency owner starts the business, it's them. They're doing everything. All of a sudden they get to 5 or 6 people and they're still trying to do everything, but then they've got 4 or 5 people to manage. And they have a choice to make. Do they stay on the tools and recruit somebody else to run the business, or do they become more of a manager? And the way that they manage their team at that point determines how successful they will be to getting to the next point. How good they are at directing and keeping those plates spinning whilst they do all the back office stuff as well. And then they hit another inflection point, which is somewhere between 12 to 15 employees, I think. And that's where they start. Direction doesn't work. There's too many people to tell them what to do. We can't direct 15 people. So we have to learn to delegate. And our ability, and to that point, we've not been very good at delegating. We haven't been able to do effective delegation. So we have to learn to delegate. And hopefully we've recruited good enough people to delegate through, and if we haven't, we get stuck. And at the same time, we're losing money because we now have non-billable employees. So it's a perfect storm, and that's somewhere there, and that can be 12, 15 employees or some 18 to 25 employees, depending on the service model of the agency. And there's 5 or 6 of these inflection points where the agency owners can get stuck and start needing help. And I mentioned, it depends whether they're doing it on their own. If they are, it's bloody hard, right? Because you've got to be the visionary, the ideas, the strategy, the partnerships, the big clients, the pitches. And then you've got to get back in the office and turn around and manage the team to execute. And typically, we're more aligned to one than the other. We're more external facing, more visionary. And if we're doing it on our own, the internal bit suffers. Or we're more internally focused. And we're into spreadsheets and execution and productivity and improvement. And as a consequence, we're not horizon scanning. We're not looking out new opportunities and that kind of thing. So there's a few variables at play, I think: size, service model, whether they're doing it on their own, and how far along that journey have they realised that actually delegation's the thing, or team structure's the thing, based on kind of the size of agency, I think that they're at.
Yeah. It's interesting, that inflection point. Is it like you're either in the business or on the business? And it's sort of you always want to try and do some of both, but at some point you've got to almost pick one. So like or they really dedicate that time and say, look, I've got to be in the business, but I'm on the business for 3 hours every morning between 5 and 8 before I get to the office. So it gets done and I get the strategy done, and then I can just go and execute during the day. You've got to have both done. And like I said, either you're doing it or you're bringing someone else in to do it for you. And that's actually my next question, because we went through this. What do you find is that what blocks people from bringing other people into their business to run it for them? So this was always something that sort of floated with me when we brought senior people in, that thing, I'm giving up control, I'm giving up equity, I'm giving up share. It's always that battle between I can have 100% of this or I can have 50% of this, right? If I get it right. How do you find that challenge for like that, almost that mental battle of I've got to give up control, I've got to give up something to grow? I always find that's very interesting. Do you see that happening?
Well, yeah, all the time. And actually chatting with you before we started, and you were saying that you help agencies with kind of habit building, things like that, is letting go of the vine, is a thing. It's a thing for entrepreneurs. It's been mine, and this business has grown through sheer entrepreneurial drive and energy and enthusiasm. And if I don't see those values represented in everybody around me, I get frustrated and feel like it's only me that understands it. So finding that person who we trust first and foremost is key. And it's really hard, right? Because those kind of people are probably running their own businesses. If we're looking for those values in other people, they're already running their own agency. So finding the person hard is key. If we've made the decision and we find the person, we haven't built those habits, those systems to let go of the vine. We've managed to. We've got this huge mind map in our head of the system of the business that really nobody else understands. And like you say, payroll, process, project scopes, deliverables, activities, all this kind of thing. We hold all of the cards, and we don't have the system, we don't have the reporting, all the dull, boring business stuff actually in place so that we can let go. And then when we find somebody, we abdicate responsibility. We go, yes, I found the person that's it's a marriage made in heaven. They're the answer to all my problems. And we go, thank you so much. Here you go. And then we turn our back on them. And what happens then, one of two things. That person either then goes off in completely the wrong direction, and I found out too late, and I get frustrated, they get frustrated. Or they have this huge spike in productivity, but because I've turned my back and I've abdicated, they fizzle out. That energy kind of fizzles out. And then I found out again because I've got this good person, but I feel like they've solved my problems and I've given them a complete blank slate. But in putting that trust in somebody else to help us with our business, it's kind of all about accountability. And accountability comes from a balance between ownership and obligation. It's, here you go, here's your thing to own, right? But I'm going to support you, and we're going to check in, and we're going to meet daily, weekly, monthly, and this is how it's going to work. And creating that, ownership, but obligation, so that we can work together to deliver some stuff. So it's a bit of a perfect storm. We don't trust anybody. We don't want to let go of anything. When we do find them, we abdicate responsibility rather than supporting them and managing them or working with them. So it's the odds are stacked against us, and we don't have MBAs, right? 6 years ago we were in our bedrooms or in our basements bashing away at a keyboard, and we've got to figure this stuff out on our own. It's a perfect storm. How do you see it? Interesting to hear your perspective. Like, does this sound familiar or?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds familiar definitely from my own story. From my own agency, we sort of got to a point where we had an opportunity there was a bigger digital agency out of Sydney that was essentially looking to move in and start an office in Melbourne. And they essentially wanted us to rebrand and become their brand in Melbourne. So that was sort of on the table. And that was that question of, well, right now we have 100% of the business. Me and my best mate at the time, so two owners. We have 100% of the business. We're in control. This is kind of what we want to do. Do we now go from 100% to 50%? But 100% of whatever we've got now, potentially 50% of, something much more considerable. We eventually passed on that offer and maintained independence, and we did the opposite. We sort of brought in some senior people. As you were saying, we found sort of a guy that had been working in big agencies in the UK, had that big agency experience and was looking to come back to Melbourne to start his own thing. So it was that sort of perfect storm of he had the experience, he hadn't already started something, so we brought him in to sort of give us that higher level expertise, and it actually worked really well for us because we pivoted into something rather than being a purely kind of digital website agency, which we would have been. We were able to stay independent and then sort of move into what we wanted to do, which was more emerging tech. So we moved into early stage AR, VR, eye tracking, gesture control, like 2008, 2009. So pretty early in that game. And that was really exciting because it was cutting edge. We were right at the front end. So we maintained independence, still brought in some of that higher level knowledge that we didn't have because we'd been operating sort of Melbourne. And from there, that gave us global exposure. We ran projects like for Peroni in the UK, for BlackBerry in throughout Asia. So we got that kind of global scale, just bringing some of that that perspective and knowledge in. So, but it was always like, oh, okay, now there's 3 partners. So now there's a different dynamic in the business, and me and my best mate are no longer. There's a third person involved now. So no, that dynamics changed, that leadership dynamics changed, and then to grow, we had to bring in even more partners. So by the end of it, we sort of had 5 partners in the business, which again is just a whole different dynamic. And you start saying right now where, for me personally, it was like originally I did everything. Yeah, I did a bit of this. I made the coffee. I did the accounts. I did the creative. I did everything. But when you at that scale now, it's like, well, you're the strategy director and you're the ops director and you're this. And for me personally, that felt weird, like having to pigeonhole myself. So that all of that stuff was kind of the mental battle over that few years of where do I belong now?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The agency's great. We're kicking goals, but where do I belong? Where do I fit in this thing that I've built?
Yeah. Yeah. And do you know what? They do exist, these people, right? And I think that's your goal. Although it feels uncomfortable, if you can be the dumbest person in the room, if you can walk into a board meeting and you feel like everybody else is better than you, that's a great place to be. I'm working with a couple of agencies at the moment, and I'm in awe of the leadership team. They are all incredible, absolutely brilliant. Give all of them equity. They care about the business. They're passionate. They're intelligent. They're great with clients. They're great with people. They're good natural leader managers, and they do exist. And I think that's a good place to be. But it comes at a consequence of losing a bit of your identity, doesn't it? Because you've gone through that that whole journey, like you say.
Yeah.
And you've kind of got somewhere. And when we help agencies with exit or moving towards exit, let's just be clear what you're hoping for here, because 90% of exits don't go through. Of the 10% that do, you're probably going to be working for somebody else for 3 or 4 years and reporting to them on a Monday morning at 8:30. And then if you do get the cash that you've been promised, there's only so much golf you can play.
Yeah, what are you going to do with your life once you're no longer got hours to fill?
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think it's a bad strategy to have to build a leadership team of people who you feel inadequate around, to be constantly impressed and feel like you have to perform, to keep them, to keep those guys engaged.
No, I love that. I think that's really, it's a very adult decision, right? We sort of mentioned emotional intelligence. That is the game at that point. You've got to be willing to drop ego, And I really like what you said about having that clarity. What does this actually mean legally, financially? That was a sort of, that bit can be really messy if you don't get it right, if you don't have it written down. Everyone has an understanding of what that actually means. We probably did it a bit scrappy at the time. We just kind of brought people in just to scale and grow, and we needed people. So we said, come in, you can have this, you can have that. And it wasn't really clearly defined. And that was probably one of the things, if I went back, I would do that differently, where I would clearly define, here's what the exit actually looks like. Here's what we've got now. But if this goes to shit, here's the redundancy, right? This is when I leave, when you leave, when he leaves, when we push someone out, when we bring someone else in, here's what it looks like. We're all clear. We all know, we all agree that's okay by me if and when that happens. We didn't really get that bit right, and it was kind of messy towards the end. So that's sort of one of the biggest regrets that I have in my agency, was not having that, just the finances and the what happens if. So I think it's made talk around that for us for a minute. How important is that stuff?
100%. I couldn't agree more. But it comes from a place of good intention, doesn't it? Because you've met somebody in a nightclub, you're a little bit drunk, and you're picturing the rest of your life with them, and you're and the next day you're married, and you're not thinking about the fact that you need a mortgage or a kids, or you don't like the way that they brush their teeth and the toothpaste dribbles down their chin. We'll put that to one side, because where the chemistry and the energy of that initial of finding them is so strong, and we hope it's going to work out for the best. But the other person that they're hearing all the promises, and you can't put Pandora back in the box. So you're saying, we're going to exit, you're going to be part of it, it's going to be a really, really good deal. What they're hearing is, yes, I'm going to get 50% of this business once it's sold. Amazing. They're just hearing the good stuff. So it's absolutely key. Start that relationship off with things written down on paper, and it's really easy to have those conversations at the start when everybody's excited. Same with you if you're starting a project, scope of work, risk log, deliverables, warranties. Have that conversation when you win the job with the client in a room with a beer. Explain, if you don't get your change requests in by this date, then it's going to take longer and it's going to cost you more. Have those conversations at the start. If you're having those conversations at the point in which it's bitten you in the backside, it's too late. It's too late by that point. Relationships have been damaged. Expectations have not been met. Frustration and resentment has grown on both sides. So day one, be really, really clear. Get, like you say, get it down on paper. Get it down on official paper. It's in the UK there are schemes approved by the government that make equity deals or profit shares really, really tax efficient for the person that you're bringing in. It's not when I say down on a piece of paper, it's not, an email that you send them. It's this official thing that really means something to them, that they achieve and, are rewarded when they do certain things. But they've got, I think it's also important to mention that I think stuff like that has to be earned. For it to be valued, right? So I use the metaphor of my child. My son is 9 and he's getting pocket money now. If I give him a £1 or a £5 note on a Friday, he goes, "Thanks, Dad." Goes and spend it. He has no knowledge of the value of that money. He doesn't really value it. It's given to him, so he spends it. If he knows that he gets a fiver on a Saturday, if he tidies his room and puts the bins out every single day, he gets to the end of the week and he's got his £5 note and he attributes it to the work that he's done, he's now more likely to hold on to it and to save it, or to spend it carefully. And the same thing comes with any kind of incentives and rewards package, I think, with our team. If we give it and the employee hasn't had to work towards it, it's not valued in the same way that we want it to be valued. But if it's earned through time and through hitting deliverables and through sweat and through money and through investment, now I appreciate it a little bit more, and I'll fight to keep it, and I'll fight to make it worth a little bit more in the future. So down on paper and earned somehow, or bought through time, bought through money, I think is really important too.
Yeah, I love that. And I always say starting your own business and having a business is the best personal development journey you'll ever go on. It's the best process because it brings up everything. But all the stuff that you're saying, like having hard conversations regularly and early, all of it is just good life advice as well. So when you get this stuff right and you're willing to push in and do it in your business, it's going to translate to your relationships. And like I said, to your kids and how you raise people and how you have hard conversations in your life, because you've had them in business when it was hard and there was money on the line. Everything else is a bit easier. So it's always this kind of transferable skill set. So I always find that quite interesting, that it's you're sort of using similar skills, but business is kind of this hotbed situation where if you can get it right, have those conversations early, do the right things. Transferable skills, emotional intelligence, all this kind of stuff is transferable to the rest of your life. So important to get it right. Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of a couple of books. There's a book called Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and a classic called The 1 Minute Manager, which was like, I think, one of the first books ever written on management. Dead simple, how to give positive feedback, how to give negative feedback, you know, and it's got to be immediate, you know, because you've got to associate, the person you're giving the feedback to has got to associate the feedback with the thing that they did. So it either enables the behavior to continue or aims to prevent the bad behavior, you know. And like you say, when you've done that in business and you've had to go and give, you know, negative feedback to somebody or supportive feedback or positive feedback, you know, regularly, it does absolutely help you in your personal life. I feel like I'm a better parent, I think, actually.
Yeah, when you've had to fire someone, everything else is pretty. Fire someone that you like when you genuinely like someone, but the role's not right, and you've got to get rid of them. It's heartbreaking, but it's a skill set worth developing. Hopefully my kids think the same. I'm not too sure, but I feel like I'm more equipped to do it now, certainly. Yeah, well, that's winning the battle already. I think if you feel equipped to do it, it's your communication style changes and all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure it's helping. Thank you so much for your time. That was we're sort of pushing through the 30-minute mark. I tell you, it's always fast and furious. If people have resonated with sort of what you've been talking about, or they're at that stage, they're looking at exit, they're thinking, I want to grow this thing. What do I do? What's the next step? How do I kind of build in some of this redundancy? What's my next step? What's the best way for people to reach out and get in touch with you? There's a couple of things up on screen for those watching the video. Where's the best place for them to come and connect with you, work with you, find out more about you? Yeah, thank you. Website, digitalagency.coach, or on LinkedIn, Janusz Stabik. There we go. It's the spelling is on the screen. It's an odd one, but the website, digitalagency.coach, is probably the best place to find us. Awesome. Appreciate your time. I think there's a lot of value in what we've spoken about today, and it's for me, it's been a different perspective than sort of other guests I've had on. That sort of higher level management thinking, growth. What do I do? How do I have those hard conversations? How do I grow this thing? Having those, bringing other people into my business. It's always it can be really sticky. Bringing in somebody external to help you manage that process, I think, is a really, really valuable thing to have. So, I'm sure you're helping a lot of agencies out there, and anyone that's in that position, reach out to Janusz and get him to come in and help you out, give you a helping hand. Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. No, my pleasure. Pleasure's all mine. And for everyone watching at home, tuning in across the podcast universe, wherever you are, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for dropping by and spending some time with us here today. And we'll see you on the next one. Thanks again. Cheers. Cheers.